and welcome to How to Deal When the Shit Gets Real podcast. I'm Rietta.
And I'm Connie. And today we're here with Kirsten. And Kirsten, I forgot. Do you want me to include your last name?
Sure, if you want to. Kirsten McNeill.
Kirsten McNeill. Sorry, guys.
No worries.
I was failing today. So, Kirsten, how do you deal when shit gets real?
Cry. That's a good, easy answer, hey?
That is the easy answer.
Wine. That was my favorite answer thus far. The wine and alcoholicism, that sounds great to me.
It's funny with what I'm going through right now.
Margaritas, whiskey.
Alcohol is like the one thing that I wish I could indulge in right now, but I can't for my health.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, technically, none of us should really be drinking it for our health. So there's that.
True.
We should all act like we don't have, we can't.
So my name is Kirsten. I like to call myself a creative entrepreneur because I have a bunch of different things that I like to do. I'm writer, editor, life coach, 2 writers. So I like to do a lot of different things. So it's nice to have kind of a general thing to tell people what I do, because that's kind of the dreaded question sometimes is, oh, what do you do for a living? Like, a lot of stuff. How much time you got?
And when Rietta went into being a writer, it was like people were telling her, well, you have to be like one thing, but we're so many things. So it's like, yeah. Sorry. But I like that it's, what did you say? Creative
entrepreneur.
That's beautiful. Like, I think that sounds so great.
I love it. I think it's wonderful.
Versus just be like, I'm this.
Excuse me while I write that down.
I love it. So is it hard to write and then edit your own books?
Yes. And that's why editors need editors and writers need editors, because working on my own book, it's kind of like, oh,
you're
yeah,
biased.
Of course this is perfect. Yeah, biased. Exactly. It was just like, yeah, this is great. And then you give it to somebody and you're like, oh, I didn't think of that.
And isn't it true too that like your eyes kind of get like used to it, so you can't really see the mistakes you're making, and that's why you need, or part of the reason you need, that second set of eyes?
Yeah, it's like that optical illusion where it's like your brain knows what's supposed to go there, so it's like, yeah, I'm just going to tell you what's supposed to be there instead of what the mistake is.
And that's why all of my teachers in college always said the first draft is never the end draft, because you need to go back, you need to read it again, because it's never should be your final draft.
Yeah, if your first draft is perfect, you are like magical or something. You have some secret.
In my mind, there's no way.
So what came first for you, editing or writing?
It was definitely writing. Editing it's kind of like a cliche, like I didn't choose to be an editor, like editing found me. Like it just kind of
I like that.
into this natural progression. It's like I've known I wanted to be a writer since like 2nd grade, and like I've always just loved reading and stories and character relationships and everything. And then I started working in like copywriting in like 2015, I want to say. And then somebody asked me to do proofreading as like a client. And then of course, like I've always been like the proofreader for like my family, and like, my dad's emails, I always got to proofread and make sure things look good and everything. And so, I've kind of just something that I've always done. And then when people started asking me to do it more, I was just like, sure, why not? Pay me to read? Like, of course, like who's going to turn that down, right? So
dream job.
It just kind of found me to, just the next natural step. And then I just started taking a few courses, reading certain books and stuff, and, just grew into more like the developmental editing and copy editing and everything. Because I like to offer like the full service, because it's nice to be able to offer that option if somebody wants to work with you through the whole process, because you're comfortable with that editor. And so, yeah, it just kind of, slowly progressed, and I was, given the opportunity, and I said, yeah, like I'm definitely going to go for it.
Sounds like you've got a knack for it.
Yeah, I actually said to my boyfriend the other day, it's really interesting some things how, I find really easy, I find really fun. And then I talk to other writers and they're like, what? Like, that is like the death of me. Like, that is not,
This is not what I want. Were you just like, wait, all of a sudden you're getting all of these like, oh, hey, can you be my editor? Where you're like, oh shit, how much am I supposed to charge for this? I bet you there's like an oh shit moment, like, crap. Let me do some
Yeah.
research.
That is definitely always a struggle, even with writers and like trying to price their books and stuff. I find it's just like how much is too much, too little, like, so it did take a lot of research and like comparing what other people are charging. And I worked with a couple of business coaches, like I still work with a business coach and stuff too, and just learning how to charge. And it's kind of that quality over quantity thing where what you're offering, and you have to kind of frame the cost around that. And living in Canada, there's like exchange rates and everything, so it's kind of funny that
Headache.
if
That's
you're in
what that
Canada,
sounds like to me.
yeah, like if you're in Canada buying something outside of the country, it's more expensive, but if you're outside of Canada buying in Canada, it's cheaper. So it's just like exchange rates and cost of, and adult stuff you got to deal with.
I know we kind of covered this when you and I chatted, but I want to know if you came up with any new ones, because I'm always wondering about like what words I use too much, or what mistakes that I make, or what mistakes that you see a lot. So what are some like common mistakes you see among like writers? Of course, I know everybody's different, but I'm sure there is some commonality between a lot of people.
And what drives you nuts? What's the mistake that drives you up a wall every time you see it? Because I am sure there is one, at least.
Yeah, I think the more that I've like at first when I was doing there was nothing that I really like was just like, oh, stop it, because I want to be nice to people, and I don't want to like judge anybody and anything, but like I feel like most of the time it's like the repetition that comes in, and it's just like something's been described, or like a memory has been described, and you kind of use the same things over and over again, and it's just like, okay, I know this, tell me something new, like it's just like
show me something else.
Yeah, so it's definitely
that's
just
not
like
that's not what I was expecting. I was expecting like when they don't understand, there, and there.
Well, I feel like that's kind of, to an extent, that's the point of an editor, because I know there's some writers that have a mentality of like, oh, my editor can deal with that. It's just like, no.
Oh, that's
you work
awful.
Your story to the point where you need an editor. So you work it with the best of your knowledge, and then
I shouldn't have to deal with that. That's on you.
Yeah, if I'm
you
working
need
on
to
something,
figure that one out.
if I'm working on something to the point of like, okay, you clearly have not read this yourself, then that's kind of a different story. But there are times where it's just like, oh, you used a different word here that I'm not quite sure that's what you actually meant. So I'll kind of be like, here's what I think you meant, and here's how I would change it. Because I know sometimes if you rely on like Microsoft Word to be like, oh, this word's wrong, it doesn't always catch like,
and
it's the right
autocorrect.
spelling. Yeah.
How many ducks have you found instead of fuck?
Well, luckily the most of the stuff that I've read is more of on the clean side, but
See,
I mean, also, that's never happened to me on like Word. That's always happened to me on my phone with texting. So I always feel like that's like a text thing and not necessarily like a writing thing in Word. But maybe Rietta has.
No, I haven't really. I have like weird things. Like for whatever reason, I always switch down and done, which doesn't really make any sense because they're not, besides for the first two letters, they are not the same. But like I will write down instead of done, or done instead of down. And I'm like, why? Why is this happening? What is going on up there? Like, this is not the word I want. And then, like you said, it's not really going to be found by autocorrect because it's not spelled wrong. So unless I use like Grammarly or something, that Grammarly is like, this doesn't make any sense, then you or an editor would get it and be like, why did she write down?
Yeah. And it's funny being on both sides of it, because I understand the struggles of writers, because there'll be some times where I'll write something one day, come back to it another day, and then read it, and I'm just like, what am I trying to say? I do not understand these words. I understand them individually, but as a whole, like, what am I trying to say here?
I've definitely had those moments too, where you look at the page and you're like, was I drunk last night and like didn't know it? What was I tired? Did I wake up in the middle of the night and write this when I was half asleep? Like, what happened?
All of the above.
All of the above. So on that note, do you have any tips or tricks for both veteran writers and new writers as they work through?
Yeah, I feel like there's a few themes that I've kind of picked up on with the writers that I've worked with. The first one is to be concise, which kind of compares to or relates to repetition as well. Because I find that as a writer, you really want to make sure the reader understands what you're saying. So you kind of like really drill it in and you're like, please understand what I'm saying here. So you kind of repeat yourself, or maybe you forget that you've said it already and then you say it again just to make sure it's in there. So it's really just finding those things that like less
You've said
is
this
definitely
before.
more.
You've said
Yeah.
this before. Take it out.
Yeah, less
Because
is
I feel
definitely
like that's for some books that I've read. I'm like, and we're repeating ourselves again. Cool. Like, let me just skip this. Let's go back to a normal thing.
And then kind of adding on to that, everything, no matter like how small, like needs to have some kind of purpose. Like, why are you telling me this? Why is this in there? Even if the purpose is like something super small, like, this needs to tell you about the character, or, this was just something funny that adds to the character. It's something like it just needs to be there. Like if you're telling me something, especially if it comes in repetition, if you're hinting at it, you got to bring it somewhere in the story, right? If you're like, trying to foreshadow that something's going to come up, if you keep telling me this and then it never comes up again, the reader's going to be like, okay, well, why did I spend, a whole page or something reading about this thing and then it never comes up again?
Right. Nope, that makes sense. And it's funny. I remember when I first started writing, I think that was one of the things my developmental editor said to me. She was like, what is this and why is it here? And one of the biggest things I remember her telling me, and I'm sure it's probably different for everybody, but she's like, anybody who's important, you kind of have to introduce at the beginning, because if you throw them in later, people are going to be like, well, they weren't important because you didn't bring them in until later. And I was like, note to self. Bring people who are important forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, another thing I've noticed too is like when something will be like introduced and then you get into a little bit more detail of it, which like that can totally be cut down, because it's just like you don't need to tell me something's about to happen and then have it happen. You can just have it happen, and just brings it more actively into the story and more in the present moment. Because if you're just like doing like the generalizing paragraph and then the next paragraph you're going into deep detail of it, it's just kind of like it's not an essay, right? You don't need to mark your points and do the summary and conclusion. You just need to just get right into it, right?
That's a good point. People probably do, when they're first new to, are probably thinking of it like an essay, and it's like, no, this is not why we're here.
Let me go through the reasons A, B, C, and D. I definitely it's like that was like high school college writing flashbacks. And then in the closing, bring it all, summarize everything and bring it all to a close.
And I think one problem is like when I was in college and I took like an English lit class or something, like we were reading like Pride and Prejudice and like books like that, and it's just like the writing of a million years ago is not the same as what it has evolved into these days. It's kind of, things are like quicker, like it's not rushed in a sense, but it's just like people want to get to the point faster.
The fucking point.
Yeah.
Considering Pride and Prejudice is like two people not flirting, but kind of flirting the whole time. But like in our minds, not flirting, but like kind of flirting back then.
You've literally just summarized that entire book.
Yeah, I did. Thank you. I'll be here all week.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. I didn't read Jane Eyre until later in life, and there was definitely a point that I was like, what is happening in this book? And why am I like 60% of the way done with it? And I'm still
have
like,
no clue.
I have her entire backstory, her whole life. Like, where is the love story?
What is going on?
It was funny because in my college class, we read the book over like a month or a month and a half or something, and we were halfway through the book, and then one of my friends was just like, you know what? I found a website where you can listen to it. You have like the audiobook basically, and it's so much easier to understand when you can get like the inflection of people's voices, and like you really know, like you can kind of tell what people are saying sarcastically, and that was so much easier. Like the second half of the book, I didn't read it. I listened to it because I could understand it better.
Okay,
I
notice so.
actually wonder if that's why it was written the way it was written, because a lot of times people had a book and they were reading it aloud. You know what I mean? Back in then when it was expensive to buy a book, not $20.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if that's why like it was written the way it was, and just language
Maybe.
develops over time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't when it was originally published. Like I'm sure everybody understood exactly what it was. So then,
Yeah.
things have changed so much in, last 100 years or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. So you also mentioned that you're a life coach. So
Yeah.
how did that become a part of your career?
Yeah, well, that's kind of one thing that just seemed to be a natural, nice addition to what I already do. Um, in my, worthy writers editing, I love to, promote confidence and empowerment and really enjoying your journey. And, my logo is like a sunflower, which just makes you feel like happy and fun and everything. So
Yes,
that
100%.
positivity, that positivity has really grown into my brand. And I just wanted something additional that I could, not everybody needs editing right away. It's like there's lulls in between. So I just wanted something else where like I want to help everybody. I want to make them feel good about themselves and be, good writers. So just folding into that, it just kind of, becoming a confidence coach for writers and just helping them with their lifestyle, because everything connects and everything is in balance. And it's just like when you're a writer, you're not just a writer, you're a mom, you got another job, you got, another business and things like that. So everything kind of connects in. So it was just nice to have that extra level of support that I could offer.
Or you could get a Rietta, because Rietta would just be like, so how's the book going? Tell me about the book. Are you writing it? Have you sat down and wrote? Like it was like a little birdie on your shoulder telling you to be a writer every day.
I mean, she's related to me. So I mean, I have extra excuse to bug her. I don't do that to everybody.
That's very
But
true.
I think I love that you are doing that, because anybody who is a writer or is creative knows that it can be a very lonely job. So having somebody extra in your corner, not only to keep you motivated and positive, but to check in on you, I would say is a win all around.
Yeah, just having that accountability and someone that, they're going to check in with you. So you're like, I got to have something to tell them, right? So it's kind of that a little bit of pressure, but, still in a way that, it's good to connect with the right people that are going to, connect with you and help you in a good way, not just be like, you suck, you haven't written today.
Positive pressure.
Who's not your inner voice that's trying to bring you
Exactly.
down. So out of being a writer, being a life coach, and being an editor, which one's your favorite?
Ooh.
Oh, that question
No.
hurts. It's like asking
Anytime.
bucket.
I'm here to ask the hard
Ooh.
questions.
You know what? I think I would have to say coaching, because it has been the most prominent lately. And I feel like it's more, it's like this, I'm on a
Rewarding.
call with someone and it's that one-to-one. It's kind of that immediate, yeah, like you said, rewarding, that immediate reward, as opposed to editing. You're kind of by yourself for a bit. You don't check in with the writer all the time. So it's just kind of feels a little bit more like you're connecting with people more easily. So yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that hurt.
Well, I mean, and I'm sure for you and for anybody who's doing multiple things, it's like, well, how do I feel that day? Do I want everybody to leave me the fuck alone? Or do I actually want some human connection?
Yeah, and I'm definitely an introverted person, so it's interesting to, have those days where, yeah, I'm just gonna edit or write and just be by myself all day. And then other days it's like, well, I want to connect with somebody. I don't want to be totally alone for the whole day.
I'm all alone.
Well, and writing can be very frustrating too. Like there are days where the words just pour out, and then there's days you're just staring at the little blinky thing going, okay.
Yeah, and that's why
That's
it's good to
today.
have that community, right? Or like, the people you meet online, or whether you have friends or family that are into writing as well. It's just nice to have, it's nice to know there are other people you can connect with and you're not alone all the time.
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
also, because we never covered this, what are some of the books that you've written and what are they about?
Well, I wrote a couple books. I don't have them published right now because I don't know what I want to do with them anymore. And like I've kind of evolved so much as a writer and with all my other career stuff that I'm like, does this really reflect what I want to put out anymore? But
Oh,
anyways, I did write a collection of short stories called Strength from Within, and they were kind of contemporary pieces, and they kind of talked about different, societal issues and like mental health stuff. It was kind of like my commentary on different things like that. And I wrote it when I was like 17, 18. So at the same time, it's kind of like, what did I know? But at the same time, it was like, I can still have my voice in it and just kind of explore those things and kind of, just, I kind of found that writing that was more of a therapeutic thing for me as like understanding myself as a teen and getting into my early 20s and stuff like that. Um, and then I wrote
wow,
kind
good
of,
on you.
thanks. And then I wrote a kind of a personal development book. It was just kind of like different. There's like 10 chapters or something, kind of like different rants about, just social media and caring about yourself and just kind of floating into my brand of, confidence and things like that.
Sounds like a
I can
book a lot of
definitely,
people need.
and it sounds
Yeah,
like something that would be helpful for all your clients that you coach.
yeah. And then it's such a fascinating thing because when I was growing up, I read a lot of like James Patterson and Stephen King and stuff like that. And that was kind of what I enjoyed reading it. So I was like, oh, I'll probably write that too. And
That was just a no.
so yeah, like I would always tell people that, yeah, I was going to be a mystery writer or a thriller writer. And then, as I tried to write thriller novels and things like that, it just was really challenging and I just couldn't wrap my head around the entire plot and where I wanted to go. And it was just frustrating. And then I started writing more just like nonfiction things that were just my thoughts and then kind of translated that into contemporary fiction. And it was just interesting that it was so much easier to create those stories and just, you know, kind of just put myself and my thoughts into these stories and kind of make it a little bit fiction just to make it more available to like a broader audience. So it's just really interesting how I always thought that I was going to be one thing and then it just kind of naturally came into something else.
That's awesome. That's a cool development. Like seeing yourself, grow over time is cool.
Yeah. I'd always had hopes too that I would write like a mystery thriller, and I haven't given up yet. So it's kind of funny that I write romance, but maybe one day. Maybe one day.
Hey,
You
you
can
know
do
what?
like
There
a
are
romance
great.
mystery.
Yes, I was gonna say there are great romance mystery. Nora Roberts is one of them.
Oh yeah, one of my girlfriends that's her favorite author
Yeah.
ever. Yeah. So I'm going to ask you another really hard question before we shift gears because it's every writer reader's favorite question. What is your favorite book?
I actually have an answer for this because you sent it to me in advance and I thought
I had
about
to
it and I
really
was just
think
like, okay,
about it.
I gotta plan this because like I dabble in so many different genres that I'm just like it's so hard to like rack
Pick
my brain. It's
one.
like when people ask me this question, I just forget every book I've ever read.
Yep. Yep.
But in the last few years, I do have two books that I really enjoyed. The first is Imaginary Friend by Stephen Chbosky. I think I say that right. I don't know. It's like a horror thriller, almost like paranormal story, which is just what I've always enjoyed reading. So that was a really cool read, and it's a thick book too, and I read it really quickly. So that's how you know it was good when you can read a book that was really
You can put
long
it
really
down.
quickly. And the other one is by Mitch Albom, The Magic Strings of Frankie Presto, which was kind of the other side of what I like to write, which is a more like character focused, really inspirational, kind of focuses on music and stuff. And I really enjoy the way Mitch Albom writes because every time I read one of his books, I feel like I'm reading an actual biography of somebody that existed, but it's just fiction. And
Wow.
it's just like it was really cool. And there's not very often that I read a book and it really impacts me really heavily. So those two books I'd say were definitely my favorite.
Nice.
just
I
wrote
love
them
how you're
down.
like only in the past 2 years. I'm like, I can't give like my whole library collection. It's just what I've read in the past 2 years.
Exactly.
And that's how you know you're a reader.
Yep. I just wrote both of those down too.
Add to your list. Okay, so moving on to heavier stuff. You were recently diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. How did you handle that news, and what's kept you motivated during this time?
Yeah, well, going back to the first thing I said to you was cry, 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 cry. Like I, I still cry about it, and it's just like I'm still kind of in the midst of finishing treatment, and yet it's still like it's one of those things where
It's
you
very
just
present in your life.
yeah, and it's like a grief thing where it's just like you're not just gonna you cry, you go through the motions, and then you get over it, right? It's like that up and down that kind of comes,
Yeah.
and it was yeah, I don't even know how to describe getting this news, and I'm only like 28 years old, and I found
Yeah.
out last summer. And then I had
That's
to go through
really young.
6 months of chemo, which it's so funny when people say like, oh, like you're so young to like get this cancer, and yet it's like so common with like women my age. And it's just
Oh,
like,
really? I didn't know
yeah,
that.
apparently. And it's just so funny when people say like, oh, like you're so young, you'll bounce back and like this and that. And it's just like, yeah, as if I don't know I'm young and it sucks that I have cancer. It's just like it's kind of that weird dark humor that I have that comes in where it's just like, no shit. But it's kind of like that thing
Thanks
where
for pointing out the obvious.
yeah, but it's hard though because people don't know what to say,
Yeah.
and totally understandably it's like people aren't trained in, everybody's not trained in how to deal with grief and learning this bad news. And it's just like, yeah, I definitely spent a lot of times just binge watching TV and just trying to function as a regular human being and go through this.
Yeah. How did you find out?
Well, I
Like,
had a
was it?
lump on my neck actually, so it was
Oh,
kind of a blessing in disguise where it was something really easy to like, okay, this is definitely not a normal thing to have on my body.
mm,
Um,
yeah.
but it really sucked though because when I first found out about the lump, it was 2 years ago, and then I started going to the doctor, and then I had to do blood tests, and then when I kind of had like my doctor called me one day, and I know now why doctors call you into the office to give you bad news and tell you to bring someone with you because no one should get news on the phone by yourself when the
Yeah.
doctor tells you you have cancer because that was horrible. And I was just like sitting there crying, trying to comprehend what this doctor's saying to me, and just like, you know, what do you do with this information? And
Yeah.
when she told me that, she could only tell me what she suspected through like blood work and things like that. I had to go through so many more tests, and like there's the
Wow.
wait times for these tests are stupid. So just like by the time like from the time I found out something was wrong or like started suspecting something was wrong to like when I actually discovered the actual confirmed diagnosis was like a full year
Oh
of
my
just trying to
What?
get it. It's just crazy. It's just
Is
like,
it weird to be like, as like a person who's never had like that news, I'm like, how did it take that long? Like I just assumed like they had a blood test and it said lymphoma. You know what I
right?
mean? Like
Like I
I'm like,
wish.
how did it take this long? That's insane.
And it's like, and like I don't blame the doctors or the nurses. Like I blame the system. I blame the people that created this medical system that we have. And
Yeah, because
you
they
know, I'm
make you
sure
jump through all the hoops
exactly.
before it can be confirmed.
And it's like, so I went through chemo for 6 months. My last day was December 8th of 2022 last year. And then they have to wait a little bit. And then I go for a scan to make sure that everything's good. And of course, everything was not good. So February 1st, I went to the oncologist for him to tell me that and for him to say, okay, we need radiologists. I waited 2 weeks for the radiologist appointment, waited another 2 weeks for the planning appointment for them to figure out how to target the radiation. And then I waited another 2 weeks, and tomorrow I start the radiation. And it's
Oh
just
my
like,
God.
you knew from the moment I had the scan what I had to do to complete my
Uh,
treatment, and yet it takes another month to go through all this. I don't
Oh
understand.
man.
Like there
that's
should be like an
awful.
express lane of like, okay, I can do all these appointments in one day. Just send me to the hospital and I'll do it all.
Right. Yeah, that would make, I mean, I guess that makes too much sense. Like, let me
Or
just do it all in one day.
or some pre-planning, you know what I mean? Like, why can't the doctor be like, okay, you're going to have this scan, but then we're going to do this like radiology appointments just in case.
Yeah.
Or like something, or like have it like pre-scheduled. We're like, we're going to think it's bad, have this all scheduled out so we can get you there faster.
Yeah.
Just in case it's bad, because if it's good, then we just cancel the appointment. No problem.
Exactly. And
Like,
I mean,
that would make the most sense to me.
yeah, if they listen to, you know, the average person, they might build a system that actually works and actually takes care of the doctors and nurses and patients. And, you know, it's one of those things too where it's kind of sad where, you know, there's so many people that have to go through the cancer center and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, it's like, how have we not figured out a more streamlined system?
Yeah. No kidding.
Definitely.
So what's
money?
Yeah.
That's probably it.
Yeah.
It's probably like, no, we want your money.
For
Let's
sure.
draw this out, give as many appointments to get your health insurance to cover this or that or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
So hopefully this is your last step. Hopefully, fingers crossed, to nix the cancer from your body.
Yeah, I have to go through 20 treatments of radiation, but you go like every day, Monday to Friday. So it's only going to be like a month. So hopefully this next month goes by super fast and then I will be back to normal because I'm just ready for somebody to tell me that you are cleared.
Yeah. Well, we will be praying and sending all the positive juju out there for you that it goes quickly and you aren't super sick and there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
You got this. At least, I mean, it's 20 consecutive and it's not like drawn out for 6 months of 20 appointments. Like that would be awful. See, there are bright sides. It's fine.
I'd be yelling at some people if that happened. Like,
oh my God. Yeah, really. Oh, thank you. Prolong my radiation. Fabulous.
Well, it's like I made a joke the other day. It's like, no wonder people's cancer battles are years long because it takes forever to get one appointment.
Oh God. Yeah, for real.
Yeah. Does your boyfriend take amazing care of you? I hope.
Of course. He's the best. And he's a hot-blooded Italian, so if anything goes wrong, I can just get him to yell at the nurses and things. So
perfect.
I love that. Because I'm that person that talks the talk. Like, I'm gonna yell at them so hard. Like, I'm so pissed. And then I'll be like, hello, how are you? I'm so sorry for this inconvenience that I'm inconveniencing you about. But can you please help me? But going in, I'm like full steam. And then I'm just, hi, I don't want to be
so sorry for existing and being a patient.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes it's just needed a second person because I'd be like, oh, okay. All right. Like I was just like, you're a doctor, okay. I don't know.
Yeah. One thing I learned, which I wish I didn't have to learn, is that you really have to like advocate for yourself in this system and like bug people and ask them for things. Cause like when I went to my doctor, if I didn't ask for a blood test, I probably wouldn't have known as soon as I did. And it's so crazy.
Because
that's crazy.
Because you asked for it. They were like, oh, it's fine.
She told me that like, oh, it's probably just like a fat deposit, and she didn't do any extra steps to confirm if it was anything else. So I wasn't concerned about it. So that's probably why it took a little extra time for me to really get into the doctor. And it wasn't until I started, you know, feeling like exhaustion, like to the point where just like, this is not normal. Like I need to go into the doctor again.
So technically, like what stage are you? Do you know?
Stage 2.
Okay, so it's not it's not horrible on this.
And it was kind of borderline stage 1, but because of the size of, there was something in my neck and then it kind of went down into my chest too. And just because like the size of it. But I was lucky that it was centralized to like just my chest. If it went down further into my body, then that'd be like stage 3, 4 kind of thing.
Gotcha. Ouch. Okay. Was there any other symptoms that you had aside from the lung? Like, did you feel bad? We've had a lot of people that we've talked to that have been itchy. Like, did you have anything like that?
Oh man, it was so crazy. Like I didn't really notice it until someone told me that was a symptom. And I was like, that's why I was like doing like scratching my head all the time and like my arms and like I've always kind of had like sensitive skin anyways. But then it was just like when somebody mentioned it to me, I was like, that makes so much sense now.
Yeah, because before you were like, oh no, I just have sensitive skin. And then you're like, wait,
Yeah.
what?
Exactly. Yeah, it's so crazy. I didn't have like a ton of symptoms other than like there was the lump and then just like feeling that weird exhaustion that just wasn't normal. And it's just like it's so crazy. Like I felt more symptoms during chemo when they're pumping poison and chemicals in my body than I did before.
Yeah, that's awful.
The itchiness still gets me every time. There's been several, we've talked to a couple different cancer patients and some people with like liver failure, and almost, I think Connie, right? Almost every single one of them has told us that they've had like
Itchiness.
extreme itchiness. And it's like, okay, so if I'm ever itchy, go immediately to the doctor.
Yeah. You know what? I bet you it's one of those like cancer symptoms that like doctors really don't want to tell you about because they're going to have a million people be like, but I was itchy. I want a blood test. And it was like, honey, you have dry scalp. You don't have cancer. You're fine. Go away.
Yeah, never go to Dr. Google. He's not a good doctor.
Oh, my mother-in-law convinced she had cancer. Nope. She was just so stressed out. She was bleeding from her butt.
Jeez.
Mhm, mhm,
See what
mhm.
happens, people, when you listen to
Did it
Dr.
to
Google and you get
did it to
stressed,
herself.
you bleed from the butt. Don't let that happen.
That's the number one symptom of stress.
But definitely don't Google your symptoms. You're going to
Yeah.
be sick and dying right away. You could have the sniffles. You're dead. You don't even know it.
It kind of sucked too because like well, good and bad, because one of my friends is an x-ray technician and she did one of my CT scans and she
Uh-huh.
was like, fuck, I could not tell you what was wrong with you because I'm like legally not allowed, but like I had a strong
Yeah.
suspicion of what it was, but I need your doctor to tell you to confirm it, right? And she was just like, I'm glad I could be there for you for the scan, but like I could not say anything.
Oh, the poor thing. That had to be so hard for her.
Yeah.
That was real because I mean, I didn't have like a friend doing my ultrasound, but the doctor when I was pregnant with my son was like, yeah, go into the ER and like, or not ER, but like you can just go and ask them for like an ultrasound at your hospital. And I'm like, cool, fine, dandy, because I am not waiting in the ER for hours for just an ultrasound. It's stupid. Anyway, they're like, well, we can't tell you anything. And then they have the doctor on the phone and they're like, well, we can't tell you anything. You have to come into the office. And I was like, can you tell me if my baby is alive or not? Anything. Like, you can't tell me at all whatsoever. They basically stress me out for no apparent reason. I ended up having to go to my doctor. My doctor was like, I don't think they're right, but they think that your placenta is tearing. But it was like only like barely like a centimeter. So she was like, I don't think they're right. So now you have to go to another fetal medicine person that's like a specialist that I had to pay like $100 to for them to do an ultrasound and for them to be like, nah, they're crazy. They have no clue what they're talking about. You're fine. It was like the wildest 2 weeks of pregnancy ever because I'm like, I am staying in bed. I'm not doing anything because if there's no placenta, there's no baby. Like he's gone. Like only been 20 weeks. So I was like, nope, I'm not doing shit. Make me move. But it was very like, it was like a roller coaster of emotions, is what it is.
Mhm.
And that was only for a baby. So I can't imagine the roller coaster of cancer.
Yeah, and the thing that also bugs me about the system is just like with like especially with family doctors, you wait 30, 40 minutes and then you go see the doctor, you're in there for 30 seconds and then they give you, a requisition for blood work and then you're done. It's just like there's so much wait time.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you wait and then you see the doctor, like you said, for a minute
Yeah.
if you're lucky. And then it's like, bye, see you later. And it's like, if you are only seeing patients for this long, how are you 40 minutes behind? Because
Yeah.
you're not spending it with your patients. So what are you doing?
That's very true. I mean, even for my little like episode where I had to go in to see the doctor because nobody could confirm nor deny anything. It was like being in a reporter. I cannot confirm nor deny the possibility of you losing your baby. So, but either way, like she came in for like a second, but we waited for like 2 hours. But I'm also still surprised that she even had time to come and speak with us and like go over the results. results that were not true. So there's that.
Lord
Stupid.
only knows. I mean, I've worked for doctors but one of the main doctors I work for, she was always on time. Your appointment was at 1:15. She was in that room at 1:15. Like she did not mess around. So there are doctors out there that are
My
on
pediatrician
time.
is like that for Theo.
It's just some of them I don't know what they're doing. We're gonna have to ask them. We need to find a doctor and have them on the podcast.
Well, honestly, though, my doctor now that she also has a midwife on staff is like great now. Now everything is like for the like you're waiting maybe 15 minutes. Like it's not as horrible as it once was. I would like tell my girlfriends, I'd be like, I'm still here. I'm still waiting for the doctor to see me for 5 seconds. Like, because you're going every other, it's just, I'm like, oh my God, why
Yeah,
am I still here? And it's been 2 hours, an hour sitting in the waiting room and an hour sitting back there. What the fuck? But now that she's gotten a midwife, it's like
See, I feel like
way
cancer patients
streamlined.
shouldn't even have to do that. There should be no waiting. Like you
Yeah.
just
Yeah,
the front of the
express
line.
lane.
Yes, the front of the line, you're taken
Yeah.
care of.
Like I
Done.
said, though, it should be like, okay, we have this scan, this test is the next day, and we've lined you up with all of your tests that you could possibly need. If all of the tests are bad, here we go.
Yeah.
Just
I
go.
was at an appointment the other day, and my appointment was for 12:50. Ended up being 1:30, and I still hadn't gotten in yet. And I heard one of the nurses be like, "Oh yeah, we're just working on the 12:30 appointments right now." I'm like, "What? I'm still gonna be here for another like 30 minutes because you can catch
Just
up on
to hang
appointments?"
out? Cool.
Oh,
Great.
I
Grand.
can't. That really irritates me because to me, it comes off as the doctor values their time more than your time.
Yep.
I don't like that. But anywho, what are some final parting words, advice, whatever you would like to leave with our listeners now that we went off on a tangent?
Yep.
Yeah.
Dr. Suck.
If you take away two things from this podcast, the medical system sucks and editing is important.
The end.
Oh, I love that.
Oh. Well, I mean, I guess this is how to do when shit gets real, guys. And I love that ending. You know, Dr. Suck and
Short
editing
and
is
simple.
important. Yep, it's beautiful. And we'll see you all next episode. Bye.